All right, hi. Thanks for being here and joining me on this part of my creative journey. Something I wanted to talk about today was something that MapCrow discussed, and I don't remember when he put this video out. I'll put a link in the description, but he put this video out a year and a half, 2 years ago or so, where he was talking about encounter design and an example of what that looked like in Baldur's Gate 3 and why he thought certain encounters were so well designed. And he shared some philosophy about there are some basic unit types that you want to mix into a particular combat encounter. And I thought I'd give my particular spin on that because my system is a little bit different than his. So I thought I'd throw that into the conversation. So when you're designing encounters for your tabletop game, then this is something that maybe will help you and help you to kind of consider what encounters you're designing for your party. So he shared that there are 7 basic archetypes. So infantry, which are your basic cheap melee fighter units that get in your way. Your ranged combatants that pepper you from afar and add damage into the battlefield. You have brutes, which are like infantry, but they're actually a significant threat. Cavalry, and their purpose is to be able to have high mobility throughout the battlefield and control the battlefield through placement. Your artillery, which affect the battlefield through area effects and through buffing and debuffing. And spawners, which generate basically more infantry and ranged units into the battlefield. So the way I approach design is a little bit different in that I actually group a few of these categories together. I'm going to have my melee units, ranged units, and I have controllers. Oh, sorry, I forgot. He also has elites. These are my basic archetypes. Usually I don't deal with a lot of spawners because adding more elements, more factors into a battle in a tabletop game tends to make the game kind of hard to play. I talked about this already in my video where I talk about my idea on how to fix summoners and that style of play. But in tabletop games as exist now, mostly when you spawn in a creature, it spawns in a whole nother actor which has its own place in initiative and its own hit point pool and all of that. And so for that reason, I usually don't put in spawners, and I would categorize them as a type of controller. So if I mapped these over, their infantry, their brutes, and their cavalry would all fall into melee. Their ranged would fall into my ranged. Their artillery and spawners would fall in there. And their elites would be any any of these. But so I start off with this kind of idea, but then I modify this as I go. And I say, what is their purpose in this battle? Right? Melee fighters are to get in the way and deal damage if they can. Ranged fighters are all about damage density. Adding more attackers can affect a space. And controllers just modify the battlefield, how the battle works. And in a way, sort of their artillery might even put in their ranged category if they're just about dealing damage. It's kind of like my first layer of how I approach this. Layer 2 is going to be taking these ideas and saying, what is your actual role? Is your role about just dealing big damage? Is it about absorbing damage? And I'll also add in, are they a distraction? And then for controllers here we have spawning, I would call it summoning. There are buffs and debuffs, and then there are environmental effects. Just throwing up walls or making a spot on the ground harder to move through or impassable, what have you. Those are kind of my main categories of how I think about this. My elites are really just a buffed up version of these, and usually a combination of those. I should also add in here tactical positioning. So how I might approach this is like his infantry. For me, they would be melee distractions, and they might be minions. I might add in so let's add in a third layer here. Are they minions, typical just grunts, or are they your elites? I do like that term elite, so I'm going to steal that. And any of these could be any of these. So his infantry will be melee. Probably their main job is just to absorb damage or to distract or to force the party to make a wall that the enemy can't, so that the party, the heroes, can't quite just push straight through. That would be tactical positioning. So I'd be using them mostly for absorbing damage and for their positioning, and their infantry is what I would probably call my minions. So the ranged is, again, adding damage density, so their role is almost always for damage, rarely ever for absorbing damage. Although if the party is getting peppered by them, they could be a distraction, making the party go after the ranged attackers instead of the actual objective of the fight. They can also, like especially blind areas, or if there's cover, right, they force the party into certain tactical locations. And again, they could be minions, they could be something a little bit more serious, or they could be it could be a boss trying to nuke you from across the battlefield. Okay, his brutes would be melee, damage dealers, and absorbing. Since there's only going to be a few of these heavy hitters, they're not really for tactical positioning. They're mostly for damage, for dealing damage and absorbing that absorbing your hero's damage. And I would classify them in this grunt class. If they're really tough, they might be somewhere between grunt and elite. I have thrown some of these sort of brutes against my party. I gave them the enemy had a class of, I called them paladins. Not to confuse that with the D&D term paladin, but their role was they were holy warriors for, anyway, they were bad guys and they were holy warriors for the bad guy faction. And they were effectively immortal, but they were dealt a lot of damage and they could absorb a lot of damage being immortal. And they were kind of in this elite category, even though they weren't bosses per se. But they were very tough, they were very serious, and the party had to think of a way on how to deal with them. And they did. Anyway, so that was, for them, is all about this kind of absorbing all of their attention. And that's what an elite really does. Elites absorb attention. Grunts are a bit more of a serious threat. Minions are, okay, we just got to get past or around these. That's what minions are. Cavalry, melee, tactical positioning. Again, how tough they are, you slide the scale up and down. For his artillery, for me, those are, they're about range. If they're damage-dealing artillery, they're ranged damage dealers. Spawners, controllers that do summoning, and of course your elites could be any one of these, whatever your boss is, a combination often. So I'll have a controlling melee guy who's spawning. I did have throw my party against an enemy who was very much absorbing damage, and he was a summoner. The party had to find a way to kind of deal with him, and ultimately they beat him into submission enough to where he yielded, and they were able to come to an agreement with him to be able to walk away on good terms, while having achieved their objective. So yeah, so there's more ways out of a fight than just attacking. Yeah, so for mine, you have basic type, refinement, threat level. So that's my system. It's kind of a three-step system when I think about a monster. Do I want to be up close, fighter, ranger, wizard, if you will? But what type of fighter, what type of ranger, what type of controller, right? You can get more specific there, and then you decide exactly how threatening is that going to be. So now I don't have my elites as a specific separate category that I think about completely differently. I think about what role is my elite playing. Yeah, this is a little bit more helpful for me in just the way that I think. I don't think that Matt Pro's approach is at all bad. I think his approach is actually really quite good. And it made me excited to be thinking about this and saying, oh yeah, that is kind of how I think about it, but I think about it in a little bit different way. I go through kind of a three-step process where I get a basic type, I refine it, and and I decide kind of how threatening they actually are going to be. And they don't have to be in this order. Like I can determine the threat level before that. I can decide, well, this is kind of like the role I want them to play, and they would best play that role in melee. So anyway, so I wanted to share that with you. I hope that anyway, like I said, I hope that helps you in your games. If not, and you have your own system, that's great too. I think that's awesome. Let me know what it is in the comments, and let me know how your other projects are going on down in the comments as well. I'd love to know what they are. And good luck on your creative journey. Thank you so much for being here for part of mine, and have a lovely day. Bye.